which
is
is
Ah,
the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, now globally syndicated on the IBGN network.
you got your intro patter right, but we forgot a
Yes.
joke, didn't we?
Well, we
Well,
did.
I do have one prepared. We
No,
can't
don't
break.
worry. We're too late now.
Have at it.
That ship sailed.
that ship sailed. Well,
Yeah.
I was flustered. We started a little bit late. Sorry about that.
Yeah. But honestly though, did you hear about the first restaurant that opened on the moon?
First restaurant that opened on the moon.
No,
I didn't.
The food was fantastic, but there was no atmosphere.
I thought you were going to say it was out of this world.
Oh, great.
Sorry.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Today, we are going to be talking about the hidden challenges of software design, especially for those of us with a non-technical background. We have a special guest, Brian Childress, to help us with the discussion. A principal technical advisor, software architect, and fractional CTO at Summit Labs, as well as a Techstars mentor, Brian has spearheaded numerous projects aiding early stage companies in developing cutting edge software products. But before we bring Brian on, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. And while we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us? We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience. Audience participation is highly encouraged.
Yes,
So,
please.
With that, introductions. Adam.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm delighted to be part of this group of exceptional individuals. You know, the fun of these broadcasts, and and you as well.
Yes.
The fun of these broadcasts and the debates that we have and the things that we learn, certainly the things that I learn, I just find incredibly valuable and rewarding.
Adam, nobody said we were going to learn anything.
Oh, that's a good point. Good point. But the fact that we do sometimes is a real bonus, isn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Occasionally learning the odd dad joke.
But yeah.
It's very kind, Adam. I too enjoy these weekly therapy sessions. So I'm Alex Abbott, founder of Sapiro, creator of the Conversation Operating System, and I'm a proud partner of DLA Ignite, and looking forward to turning this into an exciting conversation on this wonderful Friday afternoon.
Excellent.
Hi, Sandy.
Thank you for that. And I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results. We help startups scale, and I am a proud DLA Ignite partner. So, thank you for that. As I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Brian Childress. His extensive experience in software development and deep insight into the startup ecosystem make him an invaluable resource for anyone looking to navigate the complexities of tech in the business world. Brian, good morning and welcome.
Yeah,
good morning. It's great to be here, guys.
Thank you for joining us today.
We have another double door situation going on.
Yes,
Tracy and double as well.
Tracy last week was, I think, at a mum's place, and there were two doors behind, and it looked like, is it the blue door or the red door we have to walk through?
That's right.
So is one a closet, or are they both doorways into different parts of the house?
One's a closet. Yep.
Oh, okay. One leads to Narnia.
Or which one?
Brian, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, how you got here, and then we'll jump into the topic for today's discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like you mentioned in the intro, my name is Brian Childress. I'm a fractional CTO and software architect. The journey to get here has not been a straight or smooth one by any means. I've spent the last 12 or 15 years developing software for healthcare and finance, consumer SaaS products that you may know and love. And, I've had an opportunity to work on a lot of different projects with a lot of different teams in a lot of different technologies. And I think all of that experience has really been really impactful for me. I've grown and learned a lot. I think we're seeing it. The technology is just super, super exciting. And I think that's what keeps me going every day, is just being involved and continuing to learn and see how we can use technology to solve everyday problems.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Brian, I see posts and ads all the time for no code solutions. Apparently, even I can build an app. So, when I come to my IT team and ask, can we just implement this great idea that I have? It should be easy. Why are simple software solutions not as straightforward as they might appear?
So you used two interesting words that we hear a lot in software. You said just and should, right? It should be easy. And unfortunately, it's not. Those are true four-letter words in the software industry, because there's a lot of complexity that goes into those solutions. There's a lot of concerns depending on the business or the industry that you're operating in around the type of data and where the data lives and who has access to certain types of data. What type of functionality do we need? How many users are going to be on the system and at what times, and all of those things kind of come into play for what is the solution that we're looking to do. And I think a lot of businesses struggle from that same sort of thing. I've certainly been in organizations where the IT team would say, oh, well, that's going to take 6 months for us to even have time to consider how long it's going to take. And it's a real challenge. And so what we see a lot of times is other members in the organization will build software solutions, typically on Excel, or, for those of us that remember, Microsoft Access and some of those platforms. It's really, really interesting how those tend to evolve.
Access wasn't Access
joining us a little bit late to the party. We have Tim
Sorry, I'm late.
jumping in. Tim, good morning and welcome.
Hi, Brian. How you doing?
No worries.
Great, Tim. Good morning.
Good morning.
So wasn't Access the tool that you used when Excel ran out of space?
For many,
that's a good way of describing it.
And I've been in organizations where millions of dollars worth of transaction flowed through Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Access databases every day, because the IT team, wasn't able to build that custom software solution. And I think for me, I see that as really the precursor to a lot of the low code and no code tools that we have today, right? A lot of us became Excel wizards as part of our day job. And that kind of gave us that superpower to be able to create software. And really, that's a lot of what I do day to day. I just have maybe some different tools with different names that have different capabilities.
Okay.
Brian, what are some common misconceptions about software development among non-technical professionals like myself?
I think the biggest misconception that I see that I think hurts a lot of folks, non-technical or technical, is that they build something that they don't actually need. And to give you a little bit of background here. So when I work with founders and folks in different teams, and they have this idea, right? I have this fantastic idea and I need an app for that. And so I need to go and find somebody that can build apps. And there are a lot of people all around the world that are willing to take your money to build that app. Unfortunately, a lot of times the thing that we're trying to solve doesn't necessarily need an app. It doesn't need a custom software solution. But we tend to go down that road, especially as non-technical folks, because that's what we tend to understand or conflate with a technical solution is I need something that's complex and hard and costly and takes a long time to build. And usually that's not the case. Back to kind of my earlier example where a lot of companies are using Excel spreadsheets to do their day-to-day business. A lot of times that's sufficient. But if we start to get it into our mind that we need to build this technical solution, that's the route we go down, and we don't really kind of look back and make sure that we're headed in the right direction.
Okay. So, how do you manage expectations when a non-technical client or team members propose ideas that are more complex than they realize?
I think it's important to really look at why are they suggesting that particular solution. There's some sort of driving factor behind it. Maybe they are concerned about the stability of the system, so they want to make sure that it has such a robust set of tools and architectures that the system can never go down or can never be unavailable. And so really for me, instead of kind of saying that the technology that they've chosen is bad or it's too complex, I try to get to the underlying driver behind it. What is it that we're trying to do? What are we trying to eliminate as a possibility? And using that to then help decide some of the technical decisions. And then for me, kind of dialing back some of that complexity is really where I spend a lot of my time. And so I want to focus on what is the simple version of that. I think Tim Ferriss says it often, like, what would easy look like? What would it mean for it to be easy? Because then if we can solve that problem and we can do it quickly and easily and cost effective, then cool, we can move on with other things that we want to do instead of spending our time kind of building this super complex thing that at the end of the day we never needed.
So when you say app, are you referring to something which sits on your desktop or on your servers or on your mainframe, or are you referring to something that sits on your phone?
I think all of the above. Yeah, you see that a lot, right? For many of us, our cell phones are our, tether to the world. They are that gateway, that ultimate distraction device. And so that's what we think about. Oh, I need an app for this thing, or it could be something that's a website or, a desktop app. And so that's one of the areas that I spend a lot of time is just making sure we're using the same word in the same way, right? We have the same definition because my version of app and your version of app could be very, very different.
And I kind of, in the early days of mobile stuff, where smartphones were relatively new, shipping large amounts of data was costly and problematic because we had 3G, we didn't have 4G, 5G, LTE, whatever. And the advantage for me, the user, for having an app was that lots of the content was embedded in the app, so not much data needed to move between you and me. And the advantage for you in building an app was you had a footprint on my home screen, which you wouldn't have had if I'd have accessed you through a database, a web page rather. But I think that a lot of the kind of issue when people set about building these things is that although we're not big into kind of like design and marketing and stuff like that, the problem is that people don't invest any thought, or often don't invest any thought, in how it actually works and how it actually looks. So what you end up with is something where the user interface is a bit like the back end interface of a CMS system, and it just looks clunky and pointless. And I often think that when people set about building apps and resources like that, they're very poorly conceived from end to end. They've got an idea, as you said, about the problem they're trying to solve, but not what that actually looks like. And I think that often the issue with this is that it creates a bad experience for everybody involved. So there are times when an app is absolutely the right thing to do, and times when it's absolutely the wrong thing to do. But I've never built an app, so okay, let's do an app, shall we?
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And many times we think, oh, I've got a problem. Let's start building an app. And then we just start building, right? We just start putting things together the way that we understand the problem, or the way that we want to solve the particular problem. And, that's how those, internal apps or those super clunky apps, like you say, come to be, right? We just start bolting on more and more and more functionality, and we don't, necessarily take time to either revisit, what it is that we're building, or start from a good foundation. So yeah, there can be a lot of confusion and a lot of just complexity that comes into those apps over time because we don't stop and kind of reflect on what we've built so far and are we going in the right direction.
Yeah, so I'm a typical business person that might think to myself, let's do an app for this. Tim and I are in a board meeting, and I say to Tim, look, I've got a really great idea, mate. I think that we should build an app for the DLA product offering. And what is the process that we should go through in order that we don't invest a huge amount of time and money and effort in something which is bound to fail? Because Tim might be equally wowed by the idea of us having an app, or he might be the voice of reason, and he might say, well, what do you want to build an app for? But he might not. So how do we put the brakes on that and really think about this in a strategic kind of way?
So there's a couple things. At first, I want to understand what is it that we're trying to do, right? Not we want to build an app, but I need to send out emails in an automated fashion once a week. That's the problem that we're trying to solve. How can we solve that? How do we solve that now? And then try to refine that process. And a friend of mine calls it pain-driven development. So on the software side, we have a lot of things that we do that around how do we develop software. And so pain-driven development is let's do this process that we're trying to automate, that we're trying to build an application for. Let's do it in a manual way. Let's figure it out and let's kind of iron out the pieces. And then once we understand what the process is, then we have a heck of a lot better understanding of, do we need to build an app and what does that app need to start to look like? And so really starting with, let's solve the problem, and then we're going to layer on top technology. And I think a lot of times the projects that we see fail go the other direction. They start with the technology, and then we try and bolt on problems to it.
Yeah, the app becomes a solution looking for a problem, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And the user compares it to the website, let's say, for argument's sake, and they go, well, why would I put this on my phone? Because it works just as effectively on the website.
Right. And I need to use it once a month. And so there's no reason for me to have that.
So, Brian, you mentioned bolt-on a couple of times now. And I know when you and I first talked, you gave me an understanding of tech debt and so on. But I want to come back to the original question. Brian, this is easy. Why can't you just add this button? What is going on behind the scenes that I, as a non-technical user, don't understand, especially when it comes to that interactivity and tech debt and so on that you were explaining to me before?
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And so you used two of my favorite four-letter words in software development, just and easy. So let's say, for example, Rob, you come to me and you say, we just need to add this button where I can download a CSV of the data that I'm looking at, right? There's a big table on the website that shows data for past customers or invoices or something like that. Brian, just add a button for me to download that CSV. Okay. So as someone that may not be familiar with the technology or with the solution that we already have in place, some of the technology decisions that kind of got us to where we are, that adding that button could be potentially a 6-week endeavor. If we're not careful, it could be a 6-month endeavor, because what sits behind that button is the things that I'm thinking about from a technology standpoint. What does it mean for me to be able to download that CSV or that data in a CSV format? How much data? Where is it coming from? Do you have access to it? Do you have access to all of that data? Is there certain data that needs to be masked or anything along those lines? And so there's a lot of complexity that sits behind me adding a button to a website that you have the ability to click. Really, I'm thinking about that functionality that sits behind it. And that can really open that proverbial can of worms when we start to get into it. And technical debt can play a big role in what is it going to take to just add that button to the website.
So you've both used the expression technical debt. You have to assume that everyone in this call is an idiot. So what does technical debt mean? What's the fool's guide to that?
I wish I could give you a great answer. I think it varies across individual developers, across teams and projects. So typically, technical debt is something that is restricting us from continuing to move forward effectively uh, and safely. But a lot of times, technical debt, we use that as a big bucket on the technology side and just say, well, anything I don't like, I'm going to call that technical debt, because then I potentially have an opportunity to actually replace the thing that I don't like. It may not be bad. It may not, it continues to work and solve business problems, but I can't replace it unless I call it technical debt. And so I think that's where we hear a lot on the business side, man, we just are overburdened with technical debt. We just have so much. And really, it's anything that's not allowing us to serve our customers in an effective way.
I actually thought of the board game Mousetrap when you were explaining it to me. And I don't know if anyone's played Mousetrap, but it had all these little plastic pieces. It was very much like a Rube Goldberg illustration where you add this one piece and then you add this next one. And suddenly, what I think of as technology, which is streamlined and smart, it's got to be smart. It's smarter than me, is actually on the back end this amalgam of band-aids and rubber bands and bubble gum holding everything together, and adding that one more rubber band to the piece, while I thought it should be simple, could cause the whole thing to snap. And that was surprising to me, actually, that what I see as simple is not, because of all of the things that came before it, all of the legacy technology into the programming. Am I off base? Am I just remembering a fun game from childhood, but nowhere near correct?
It was a great description, Rob.
Yeah.
Well,
no, I mean, I think that's a great analogy. The game of Mousetrap is a perfect kind of mental framework for how software gets built and where it gets overburdened with, tech debt and that sort of thing. That's a lot of times why we see software projects tend to only last for about 5 to 7 years on average. After that, it's either we throw it away and completely rewrite it, we go with another solution, or we just kind of live with the way things are.
So what are some strategies for non-technical people to employ to effectively navigate and contribute to software development? I know nothing, but I know what I need. How can I help you?
Help me to understand like your business, the thing that you're trying to solve. Really, where non-technical founders and subject matter experts can really provide the most value to a project is really just, what is it that we're trying to solve? How do you do it now? Like, just, I love when I have an opportunity to kind of actually sit next to someone who's doing the job day to day that we're trying to add software to or automate in some way, and just kind of sit back and just watch how they work. Like, are they going to 3 or 4 different programs to capture data? Are they copying from one and pasting in another? Like, just let me see how that works. Is email involved? Is there other communication platforms? What's the delay? What are the pieces that you're missing? When I can understand that, then, I have that technical background. I know how we can solve some of these problems. Then we can start to just layer on technology when and where it makes sense. So really, I encourage folks to just tell me what you do day to day. Where are your pain points? Because again, back to those definitions, like when you say you want something, let's say in real time, your definition of real time and mine as a technologist are completely different. And if we're not careful, and I don't ask the questions of what do you mean by real time, or what do you mean by this particular word, then I'm going to take my assumptions, my lived experience, and put that into the software. And then it's going to go over budget, go over time, all of those sorts of things, and ultimately be the thing that you didn't need. So just let me ask a bunch of questions, and almost to an annoying degree, I think is where you can really be most helpful.
Isn't there though the issue that, and I get what you say about you have to talk to the people that are doing the job about where are the pain points, where are the bottlenecks, how can that be streamlined. I think a potential challenge though that I see in that is that people don't know. And by that, I mean, they don't know what can be changed and what can't be changed. So a good example of this would be, 25 years ago when I was working in an office and somebody was preparing an invoice, they would say, initial site visit, space, £50. And then new line. And then they'd fill up the page with spaces because they didn't know about A, the tab key, and B, creating specific tabs or even decimal tabs for the numbers that were going to sit on the right-hand side of the page. And they would not have foreseen spaces as being an issue. It's just what you have to do. And it's only you as the expert that can look at it and say, well, actually, you can save 500 keystrokes in every single one of these that you ever produce by learning this technique. And I think that to a certain extent, we, particularly in such a fast-paced industry, we as a business are on the periphery of that industry. We help people in that industry, but we're not actually coders and whatever. And the issue with that is that we don't know what's possible and what isn't really. So how do you kind of help open people's eyes to what that utopian view of perfection could be?
I think as technologists, a big part of my role is that education. And for technologists, the stereotypical, we just want to sit in our dark rooms with our hoodies and code all day. Not as many people in the industry are actually that type of person, and so a lot of us have the opportunity. And I think it's really in large part of our job to understand how can we work with folks that may not also be technologists, and helping them to understand some of those capabilities, some of those possibilities. And so, a large part of my job needs to be, how can I share, oh, here's an exciting thing. We have all of this internal data within our business, or we have this regular process that I see you doing, and it's taking you 15 minutes to put together. And with, some slight tweaks here and there, we can make that a much more efficient and even, much more productive solution, and just really bringing that to the surface. And so I think for me, I'm always looking for those areas and opportunities for efficiency, because that's what software is, right? It's making things more efficient and more, less error prone, and kind of eliminating a lot of that, just cruft around how we work day to day. And so, I take it as my job to try and find those little areas where we can improve day-to-day processes and efficiencies, and then bring that to.
How often do you find that IT goes out to the field, visits the sales department, for example, or the marketing department, to just observe and recognize where there are opportunities? And who's the onus on for facilitating that? Is that the responsibility of marketing, for example, to reach out to IT and say, please come by and observe? Is that IT's responsibility to say, hey, we're going to regularly go out and meet with you to watch what you're doing? Everyone's already working 28 hours a day. When do they find time to do that? What should be done in that regard?
It's To answer your first question, Rob, no, they don't go out enough, right? A lot of times, there's either a physical wall or a virtual wall where, okay, IT, stay over here and do your IT things. And then the rest of the company is going to be over here, making enough money to pay for you guys to do whatever it is you do. And I think what we're seeing, and I hope that we continue to see in the industry, is there's more of a shift where those software engineers and the IT folks are coming out and working directly with business stakeholders, and really having those conversations early and often. And I think really for me, from my perspective, the onus is on me as a technologist to go out and find those areas of efficiency, find those opportunities where instead of all of us working 28 hours, maybe we can reduce that down to 23 hours that we're all working, because I know what we can do with software let me show you ways that we can improve your workflow. And, it may be something very, very small and simple for me, from my perspective, but for you, that could change everything, right? That could bring 2 days back into every month that's now available for you to do other things.
And what about the communication gap? We've just in this conversation used words differently. And kudos to you for recognizing when my definition of real time and your definition of real time were two completely different things. But how do we go about intentionally defining these things without seeming to talk down to the other party?
That's a really, really tough one. It really is. And both being the one presenting information and the one receiving information, I think we have to really come into the conversation with the expectation that, hey, we're all trying to row in the same direction. We're all trying to solve the same problem and serve our customers the best that we can. And so I think it's really important to kind of come into the conversation, with our guards down a little bit and just open to receiving that type of information. And for me, I like to be the dumbest one in the room. I like to ask the questions that I may know the answer to, but I want to make sure that the folks that may not feel comfortable asking the questions will at least hear the answer. And so when we throw around a lot of terms or TLAs, 3-letter acronyms, and we assume that, oh, well, everyone in this room, virtual or physical room, knows what that means, right? Because we've all been in the same industry. No, we haven't. We don't all have that same experience. And so, I will be the one that will take that hit to my ego or whatever it may be to ask those questions so that I know that we're, hopefully on the same page. It's important to just kind of put ourselves out there and be willing to ask those questions for clarity, because being willing to do that versus potentially going down a completely wrong path, costing us a ton of time and money because we weren't willing to ask that, hey, what did you mean by real time, Rob? Type of question.
And Rob,
Yes.
it's okay to talk down to people.
Is it really, Alan? Adam, is it really?
Andy.
Oh, man. Brian, how do you balance pushing for innovative solutions while keeping projects practical and grounded in business realities on both sides of that equation, really? How, from a technical point of view, would you do that? And then maybe give some insights for a non-technical person advocating for their side of it.
As far as like continuing to really, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to solve business problems, right? In order for the business to be successful, we're trying to bring in automation and software and technology. And when the business is successful, you can continue to pay my big fancy software engineering salary. And so we have to really focus on solving those problems. And I really want to make sure that we are also innovating. And so that's where, as technologists, again, kind of part of my job is to see where those new and evolving technologies are going. What is coming out in the industry? And then, I treat it like an engineering problem. How can I we'll use the technology of the year here, AI. How can I bring AI into my organization? Right? There's a lot of things that we may be able to streamline or improve by bringing that technology into the organization. Now, we have to be very careful because some of those leading edge and bleeding edge technologies, as fast as they come into existence, they can also go away. And so we have to be very careful about what we bring into the organization and what we kind of build our business on top of, or our business processes. So it's a very, very delicate balance, but it always has to go back to what is the problem that we're solving for the business, and are we doing that in the best, most efficient way? If it's going to take me 6 months to implement something that's clunky, then I didn't do my job. And so I take a lot of ownership as a technologist to make sure that we're pushing in the right direction.
And what about pushing back? What about the non-technologist that comes to you and says, Brian, AI is everywhere in sales. My sales team needs more AI. Can you get us some AI, please? As though you were walking just down the grocery shelves and on the cereal aisle. Oh, let me add this to the
An AI that
shopping
prevents
cart.
me from spilling my tea on my desk. Right?
Yeah, well.
Oh, it's coming. It's it'll be out next year. There's a lot of for me, I want to understand why. And so, asking the 5 whys of, okay, what is it that you're trying to get out of that? When you say you want AI, do you want AI so that you can put it on your website that this is an AI driven solution? That's a different AI than, I want to streamline the content that we put together for our newsletters that we send out, or blog content or something like that. So really trying to understand, okay, when you say AI, why? What is it that you're looking for? Right? Because there's some sort of driver behind that. And a lot of times, I think as technologists, we don't ask why enough. What is it that you're trying to solve? And so it's like, ooh, we get to add AI. And then you just kind of go off into your little cubby hole and add a bunch of stuff that didn't actually need, but it cost a lot of money and cost a lot of time to get there. And that's, I think, when we hear that, I think it's like 70% on average of software projects fail. I think it's because we hear those terms, right, and we add it into a project and you didn't actually need it. We heard the same thing, I don't know, 7-8 years ago with blockchain. Everything needed blockchain. Nothing needed blockchain at that time, right? There were very specific use cases where it made sense, but there were a lot of projects that added it just because it was new and shiny.
You said 70% fail?
Yeah.
I'm surprised it's so low, frankly.
Depending on
I'm
which
actually
article
surprised
you
it's so high, because I worked for an enterprise level organization that was regularly rolling out this software development and that software development, and not a one of them failed. Now, we stopped using them within a month of training, but they were complete successes. Just ask the IT team and the project sponsor.
I guess your definition of success and mine might be a little bit different, Rob.
That could be.
But I think that there's a very real risk that development of bespoke software enhances the problem rather than the solution. So you spoke earlier, Brian, about email marketing automation and stuff like that. That'd be a great example of this. So, and we're seeing it at the moment with the advent of AI helping people to rewrite things and create more effective, I use the word in quotes, more effective scripts. And the problem is one of an overwhelm that everybody gets from this kind of communication. We all are looking for a solution, but the solution is one of how do we stop this influx of email that we get, because it's an interruption to all of us. And often, your idea of you've commissioned this tool which is going to enable you to send more emails that are more targeted, and then you start to do that, and then Alex says, well, actually, Brian's got this great idea and he's sending out more emails now and they're more targeted, so I need to have that as well. And then Tim decides he needs to have it, and then Rob decides he needs to have it. So now the problem is that I'm receiving 4 times as much email. And actually, the problem was never how many emails you send out. The problem was that the people don't know who you are, so they never consume the emails. And, I think we see that time and time again where, so we've had a clinical psychologist on this show, and she said humans are hardwired to be lazy.
Mm-hmm.
If it's easy for you to walk the short route rather than the long route, you'll walk the short route. And I think that often, things are commissioned as a shortcut, a silver bullet, a magic button, an easy button that will make everything work more effectively. And many times it just enhances the issue, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So now if I'm receiving 4 times more email, then I'm just going to use the AI to filter out those emails that I'm not reading, right? So I'm using one tool to fight the other. But no, you're absolutely right.
So how do you balance those two things? Because and I know that the challenge that every company faces. So if you think about your company, so you help organizations make develop software to solve specific issues. The more of those you sell, the more you're able to build people. That means your company is more successful. I'm saying your company, but this is true of every organization out there. And your issue is not whether or not this compounds the problem. Your issue is that you're now selling more stuff, and that's the same for Alex. That's commissioned his email marketing automation. The thing is, he's got the jump on Tim and Rob. So the great news is that he gets a 15% uplift in sales only for the next 3 months, and then after that, the problem is compounded because he's got this expensive tool that's not now generating any revenue because everybody's got the same thing. And it isn't part of the issue that it's very easy to copy stuff. It's very easy for me to look at what you're doing and develop something which is broadly similar. And in fact, standing on the shoulders of giants and all that, may be even better than the product that I'm copying. And whether it compounds the problem is actually not a concern of mine. What is a concern of mine is, am I going to get paid this month?
There's so listening to you talk about marketing automation. Let's say the MarTech umbrella, and to Brian, your point about building or buying tech as well in this case to be more efficient. I feel like we've seen this evolution, particularly in the marketing software space, where these tools were designed and built to make people's lives more easier, more efficient. But now we've reached this point where there are so many applications. There are so many applications that one brand might be using, 70 or 100 different applications with so much overlap that actually, as a whole, like for little tasks, there might be a lot of efficiency, but as a whole, it's creating a whole lot of inefficiency and challenges in terms of making customer data actionable from one platform or one application to another. And at what point do we say enough is enough? It all needs to be, thrown away and we start again.
And to add to that, how much leeway, how much input does IT have in that? The businesses come to you and say, we want this.
Yeah.
How much opportunity do you have to push back?
And to say, no, you don't want this. Yeah. You really
right.
don't.
I'll give you an example. I worked in a call center once where because we were in a call center and we logged into our computers and logged into our phones, they knew every second of every day and how we spent it on break, on calls, on hold, on this, on that. And they had this one report, the Every Breath You Take report, where they could report on everything a representative did. Was this compiled by IT because of the novelty of, look what we can do? And sometimes I think there's that novelty aspect in IT and development. And versus, was it built because the business team went to them and said, we need this, and IT said, yeah, we can do this, not, well, what are you going to use it for? I mean, the lesson for me with that report was, just because you can measure something, or in IT and novelty, just because you can do something, doesn't mean you should. If you're not going to act on it, if you can't apply it. So I come back to, how much leeway, how much pushback does IT have? How much say do you have in that process? Or are you just tasked with executing?
Unfortunately, I think the norm, Rob, is that we don't have a lot of say. In my experience, some of those scenarios, there's been someone else in the organization that said, hey, I think we have a problem, or hey, if I bring in a solution, I might get promoted. And so I'm going to bring in a solution. I'm going to start to talk to sales folks. I'm going to start to, go out to dinners and the golf course and those sorts of things and I'm not picking on sales representatives, but that's kind of how it typically plays out is we found this solution, right? We are sold on it. This is going to solve all of our problems that we ever had and will ever have. And we've allocated budget and we've signed the contracts. Hey, IT, install this and do it as soon as you can. Usually it's at that point in the conversation that IT comes in. It's like, what? I had no idea that this even existed, that this was a problem, that you were even, but now you're going to, sign us up for a $200,000 a year license or something along those lines. And so unfortunately, that's typically how we see it play out in a lot of organizations. Now, I am seeing it shift a little bit in the industry because we are seeing, how that doesn't necessarily play well. And then for me, as part of my job, I need to try and find ways to make friends with those decision makers, those folks that are really, early on in that process. I really kind of want to understand it so that I can kind of keep my ear to the ground, if you will, and see where things are going. And when I can do that, then hopefully, maybe I can help steer us in the right direction. And a lot of that is leadership and communication and has nothing to do with technology at the end of the day.
So you coach startups as well through Techstars, I believe you mentor. Um, what are some common misperceptions you've encountered about software development, specifically with startups, and how do you address them? Sometimes from a technical startup point of view, but I'm thinking more so the non-technical startup. When they think, oh, there's just an easy button that can be done, how do you mentor them to help them understand what IT is there for and what they can do?
You're probably going to sense a theme here, but I always go back to what is it that we're trying to solve, right? And a lot of times, technical or non-technical folks, we just we try and find the technology to solve the problem without a clear understanding of the problem. So a problem well defined is a problem half solved. And so really what we see a lot of times in these startups is that we start to build something, and we're not validating that idea. We're not going out and talking to our customers. We're not making sure that the thing that we're building, or the way we're building it, or the way that we're targeting our potential customers, all of that is right. And so we spend a ton of time and a lot of resources in building this thing, but we haven't actually spoken to someone about, is this the thing that we need to solve? And so I spend a lot of time with my founders in just making sure that we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Another one, sorry.
Go ahead, Brian.
Just one more that I see a lot hurt non-technical founders is around ownership of their code and the software systems that are being built. Especially if founders go out and hire a freelancer or hire a development agency, and they don't maintain ownership, they can be in big trouble. The startup that they're, everything that they're building it on, that software can go away. They can completely lose access to something that they've paid all sorts of time and money to build. They can completely lose. And so we see that a lot, unfortunately.
I just wanted to, I think there's a problem with my LinkedIn pairing with Restream, because I noticed there's a couple of comments, not quite sure when they were made, but because, this show is really about the audience, I wanted to give them a shout out. So Andrew Rice, who's been a guest on the download previously, he works in cybersecurity. He was saying the ball of mud that never gets rebuilt for fear of breaking. I've seen this in a number of industries. They prefer to write a wrapper around it. Does that mean anything to you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You hear spaghetti code, big ball of mud. Those are very common analogies for a lot of software systems that we get to work with every day.
You get the joy of unraveling.
Yeah. Yeah. We usually just kind of brush it to the side and then build something new and fancy next to it. Yeah. Or like he says, a wrapper. Yeah.
Yeah. And then David Todman, a fellow at the ISP, works within sales and marketing training. He says, interesting as an engineer by original education, we have a new product/application process like stage gate to refine and define a new product or process to ensure fit for purpose and commercialization.
Nice. Yeah.
Cool.
What
Thanks, David.
can you put that in English?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oh, what was he saying there, Brian?
Really, I think we're seeing this a lot in organizations, especially bigger organizations. It's almost a justification for what is it that you're building. So instead of kind of just giving a team of developers time and money to kind of just go off and solve these problems that may be half understood, there's really like we're spending more time up front to understand what is it that we're building, why are we building it, what's the business justification, and how can we tie that to a return on investment? What is that ROI that we're expecting? And us paying $1 million or $2 million, which is very, very common for most enterprise internal applications, is it worth that return on investment? What are we going to see from that? And it may or may not be. And so then a lot of companies that I've seen, they'll use that as a driver for then asking the question, well, what do we need? What is the easier solution that gets us to the same point? That's how I took it. Hopefully that's right.
Yeah, I assumed that there would be some sort of minimal viable product, and there would be a.
Do you mean an MVP, Tim?
An MVP. Sorry, am I supposed to talk in?
No, we don't want TLAs.
And, so I assumed there might be, you'd start off with maybe a minimal viable product, and or do a sprint, and at that point work out whether you want to do it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Enter the stage gate.
Yeah, to see who wins. You do a sprint to see who wins, and then whoever wins.
Alex, you do a sprint to win.
Isn't that what something arranged by procurement?
So, Brian, for non-technical professionals interested in gaining a better understanding of software development, what learning resources or strategies might you recommend?
I mean, we kind of talked about it a little earlier. We're almost overwhelmed by the amount of content that's available. I'm a big proponent of podcasts, YouTube University, if you will. So really going out there and finding great information, really starting with, almost like a dummy's guide to, kind of fill in the blank type of technology, really looking and doing some Google searches. There are a lot of great articles. I don't have any that kind of come to mind as like the primary ones, but I would start to look for podcasts and YouTube videos and books and blog articles that really speak to a non-technical person. And a lot of what you're going to see is an analogy between what do we experience in real life and what is the technology term that we're kind of hearing all the time and often confused by, and kind of bringing those two together. If you find a resource that has that kind of translation, those are really, really powerful.
Brian, this has been fantastic. Thank you very
Brian.
much. We really appreciate your insights. You were able to dumb it down for me. Thank you for that. I understand, well, most of it anyway. But how can people find out more about you? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Thank you all for letting me be here and join you today. The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm most active there. I'm posting regularly, having a lot of conversations in the DM. So I encourage everyone to kind of reach out, connect, and send me a message. Happy to chat.
Excellent. Well, for our panelists, for our guest, I want to thank the audience for their active participation in today's session. If you have something to say, if you want to be a part of one of our next digital download episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Visit us at digitaldownload.live and click on the Be Our Guest, or scan the QR code on screen now. Brian, again, thank you so much for being
Thank you,
here.
Brian.
Adam, Alex, Tim, as always, thank you. This has been another edition of the Digital Download, which is
the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, now globally syndicated.
awesome. He can be taught. Fantastic.
Eventually. It's only taken 3 years, mate.
Thank you all very much, and we will see you next time.